exposed fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
The future of America comes down to one state and one state only, Georgia, and the whole world is watching. This is by far the biggest Senate runoff in probably all of American history, because what it boils down to is socialism versus freedom. At the end of the day, we are defending the Constitution. We are defending the right to earn a living. We're defending America, and we need Georgia to win. We need to keep control of the Senate. Today is all about Georgia. It's going to be a long day. There's going to be a lot of action. We have no idea when the polls are going to close. This could go on for a while, but you better know this one thing, that the whole country is making sure that this election is just and fair, especially what happened after the presidential election in November. They have put $100 million the Democrats have put into advertising to win this election. That is how badly they want to take control. If Republicans show up, if they turn up, we will keep control. Statisticians, mathematicians, they have all said Republicans need to show up. The worst thing we could do is boycott this election out of spite because of what happened in November. That is the dumbest and the most outrageous thing that any voter can do. So if you're in Georgia, if you know people who are in Georgia, tell them to get out and vote. America depends on it. Let's head over to Fox News right now and see what Kelly Loeffler had to say to the American people and the Georgians more specifically this morning.
And then we'll do questions. Look, the future of the country is on the ballot here in Georgia today. There's a stark contrast. The path of the American dream that I've been fighting for, or socialism. My opponent would bring socialism in the form of big government, higher taxes on every single hardworking Georgian family, government-run health care, defunded police, Green New Deal. I've been fighting for Georgians. I helped bring $47 billion right here to Georgia. I'm fighting for Georgians to get the $2,000 checks and make sure that we protect school choice, affordable health care that protects pre-existing conditions, and the ability for every single Georgian to live the American dream. That's what I'm fighting for, and that's what our campaign's been about. That's why we have so much momentum. Georgians know they have a fighter for them in Washington, an outsized voice, an advocate for Georgia values, and I've stood strong with Georgians every step of the way through this pandemic, through the economic recovery, and I'm the only candidate in my race that knows how to create jobs and help get this economy back on its feet, get back to our way of life here in Georgia, and do that safely as we manage through this pandemic, get our kids back in school, and get back to work.
Senator, is the president's rhetoric hurting?
So as we listen to Kelly Loeffler here, she makes a lot of good points, and this is what we're fighting for. We are fighting for the American dream. At the end of the day, this is what the Republican Party stands for. It's what it's always stood for, the American dream, the right to get out there and earn based on your hard work, your hustle, your work ethic. Socialism, big government, these are all things that OSEF and the Democrat Party stand for right now. The writing's been on the wall. It's been very clear the direction that this country is headed. It's headed down a very dangerous path. We've seen it coming for a long time now. We've seen draconian governors rise and control their constituents. We've seen them take away the right to earn. We've seen them force vaccinations on people. And we've now seen time and time again little crumbs of socialist crack money being thrown to the American people. And that's what's happening. They know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to get us addicted on free handouts. That is the very definition of socialism. And this is what the likes of Kelly Loeffler and Perdue are fighting so badly for. Georgia has been a red state for 2 decades now. Why on earth would it flip blue? Just like that. Georgia hasn't changed that much. What's going on right now in Georgia that suddenly it might flip blue? This isn't a Trump thing. This is a Georgian issue. This is a freedom issue. And they are pretty damn red down there. So if Georgia miraculously flips blue just like that, it's going to make us all wonder why. What are they so angry about down there? Biden's already run the presidency. Is it now not time to protect checks and balances? Because that's what's at stake here. We do not need a far radical left agenda. That's not what's good for this country. We don't need a right extremist agenda either. We need the checks and balances. If Georgia flips blue, we lose that. If we keep control of the Senate, Biden's now a lame duck president, we at least get to say, hold on, we're not going far left, enough of this nonsense, and we get to call more of the shots. At least we get to keep it in balance. And that's all that America should want right now. Government-run health, very socialist. If Democrats get what they want, we'll start to see more of a socialized medicine situation. And all you have to do is look at what's happened over in the UK over the last few years. I always tell people, we don't need a crystal ball to tell us how bad socialism is for this country. All you need to do is look at the UK. The UK has screamed, we want out of the European Union. We want nothing to do with it anymore because the European Union's socialist agenda poisoned the United Kingdom so badly that it nearly went broke over it. European Union was rinsing the UK for everything it was worth, taking that back home to their own people in their countries. They bled the UK dry, and they've had enough, hence the reason we have Brexit. So the UK people and the UK as a nation have already shown us what socialism looks like. They want nothing to do with it. So let's just fast forward 20 years and get to that point, but today by winning Georgia. She's advocating for $2,000 checks. She's advocating for affordable health care with pre-existing conditions. So they're taking bits and pieces of what they feel works for America in general, rather than going far right. But we're not seeing that from the other side. We're not seeing bits and pieces of freedom, plus affordable health care, plus trying to help the American people. All we see is higher taxes, socialism in the form of healthcare, big government having their fingers more in control of businesses. Government in business is not a good thing. The government can barely even run the government, let alone America's economy or America's businesses. So for the sake of all Americans and for the sake of growing the economy and moving America in the direction that we would so desperately like to see it in, it's probably best that American politics stay out of running businesses, because as you see, by locking them down and forcing them to close, they've pretty much crippled America over it. Let's head over to the Keyboard Warrior Cam and see what the American people have to say about the Georgia State runoff. Harry says, Georgians, please don't let California and New York influence you into believing in the socialist narrative. It is a failed ideology. Exactly what we just said. What country do you know that's actually achieved a successful socialist agenda? Because to date, there aren't any. Socialism as an ideology fails 100% of the time. Catherine wrote, please vote red. Our kids and grandkids will live in a communist country. Vote red. Save our country. America is under great attack. It's under a great threat right now of becoming a communist / socialist country. When the government tells you you are not allowed, or when they tell you when and when you are not allowed to work, that is no longer a republic. That is no longer a democracy. That is called communism. So we've already had a taste of communism while being locked down throughout the pandemic. Now, in China, they got away with that because China is a communist country. When you tell the Chinese you are not allowed to work for 2 months, they will do as they told, stay inside, because that's what they're used to. that is acceptable in a communist country. The UK has had a little bit harder of a time with it, but they're not full-blown American freedom. So they're kind of a hybrid here, which is why they've somewhat accepted the idea, but there's still great resistance over there, understandably. And then you have America, who is completely 100% against these lockdowns. They know it's unconstitutional. They know it's not right, which is why we're having such an issue right now getting through the pandemic. But as I said in my show yesterday, the Constitution does not take the backseat to a pandemic. It never has, nor should it ever. Connie says, the people of the world, and that is right, the people of the world are depending on our country's freedom. They are fighting for their freedoms, and we give them hope that they can get out from under socialism and communism. This isn't just my opinion. This is the opinions of a millions right now. Everybody is screaming, will you wake up? Will you look at what's going on here? This is not acceptable. This is not right. Chit's praying for an honest election, praying for both Loeffler and David Perdue's victory. And that's all we want here is an honest election, a fair election. The Democrats have put $100 million into this election, the most they've ever spent on a single Senate state runoff or election for that matter. Georgia has hired an immense amount of law enforcement and legal support to make sure that this election is just. But we're only going to know tonight when the results come in. And after what happened in November, I think it'll be clear to know whether this was fair or whether they stole again another election. Wanda says, I pray she gets voted in. We don't want socialism in this country. We honor liberty, justice, and freedom. Amen. We deserve the American dream. Jan says, the president said, shut up. Let's hope that after this, he'll understand who the winner is. We will not lose the country. We will move on, and it is what it is. Have fun. Enjoy while you're here. It's a lot of mixed opinions here. Clearly, a state like Georgia, which has been red for over 2 decades, if Republicans show up, and I was listening to some of the media this morning, if more than 56% of the Republicans show up, or 56% of Republicans show up, we will keep Georgia red. We will keep the Senate. So it's a numbers game here. It's a turnout game. We just need people to turn out. And the worst thing that anybody can do, whether it's during the Georgia Senate runoff or for all elections moving forward, the worst thing that we could ever do is boycott an election. We might have to factor in a margin of stolen votes, and we might have to need even more Republicans show up, but we have to show up. We have to continue to turn up. We can't turn our backs on the electoral process no matter what. It's bad for America, and it's a guaranteed way to lose everything that you've ever fought for. So we have to trust the system. We have to trust that the electoral process is being scrutinized and that amendments will ultimately be made. Let's take a look at a couple more keyboard warrior comments, and then we'll head over to Osif and see what he has to say. It's only fair. We've taken a look at Kelly Loeffler, and we'll also take a look at what Democrat candidate Osif has already said this morning as well. Carlos says, Kelly represents a pillar for Republicans and for freedom in American democracy. We hope she can do it to slap the Democrat communists who are the poison of societies. Again, this election is all about freedom. It's freedom versus communism. It's freedom versus socialism. Georgians, please open your eyes. No to communism. So many Georgians are against the direction that this country will head under a far left agenda. So I don't see how Georgia can lose with so many strong and opinions against the ideologies of a far left agenda. I'd be very surprised and very shocked if they actually lost. Trusting God for Georgia today, Cecilia. Thank you, Father, for your perfect will today. Dorinda says, vote Georgia. We don't want a communist country. So again, the consensus here is Georgians don't want a socialist agenda. Everyone voting in Georgia, take a picture of you and your ballot and tweet it around the world. Only count every legal vote. Let's take a look at what Ossoff has had to say this morning as well during his final campaign rally.
I see there's some interest in the election today. Thank you so much for being here. I want to start by thanking the people of Georgia for voting in record numbers through this early voting period and urging everybody who hasn't yet voted to get out to the polls and vote today. As long as you are in line by 7 p.m., your vote will be counted. This is history unfolding in Georgia right now. I want to encourage everybody to be a part of it. There's so much good work that we can do to lift up people in this state. We can beat COVID-19. We can surge vaccine distribution and make sure testing and vaccines are free for every American. We can put Georgia's own CDC in charge, as it should be, of our national pandemic response. We will be able to pass $2,000 stimulus checks for the people next week when we win these races in Georgia and get economic relief directly into the bank accounts of the American people who are suffering right now. We will be able to pass a significant jobs and infrastructure plan to rebuild this economy. We will be able to pass landmark civil rights and voting rights legislation. And I want to ask everybody in Georgia who hasn't yet voted to participate in this election, participate in this historic moment, and make your voices heard. So thank you all for being here, and Miriam will be calling on members of the press with questions.
So as you can see here, there's a very stark contrast in the way that each candidate is campaigning for their sides. But let me start by this, asking this question. Why, when it comes to Democratic campaigning, do we hear coronavirus all the time? Georgia CDC, what does that even mean? We want to have our own Georgia CDC. Why? Why this pandemic is going to be a blip in American history. We are going to be laughing, if you're not already laughing already, we're going to be laughing about this pandemic even 2 years from now and what a joke it was and how we overreacted compared to the survival rate, compared to other pandemics, the Spanish flu, the bubonic plague, Ebola, that really wiped out a lot of the world's population. 1 million people is really not much to write home about in the grand scheme of things. But the Democrats, they keep playing on COVID. Joe Biden, all he did when he campaigned was, we got to beat COVID. We need to wear a mask. I mean, what does it have to do with the direction that America heads in? Do these guys have anything else to discuss besides COVID and increasing vaccine distribution? We're going to get over COVID. It's going to go away eventually. Now what happens? I have not heard from the Democratic Party what they plan on doing to steer America in the right direction. I haven't heard it from the presidential candidate. I haven't heard it from Democratic senators or congressmen or women. All I hear is we need to get better. We need to take COVID seriously. We know that. But we're not hearing anything as far as how do you plan over the long term to steer America in the right direction? Job and infrastructure plans. Well, of course, that's going to happen with higher taxes. How do you pay for all of this? You got Senator Mitch McConnell fighting against the increased payments because he's worried about killing the economy financially. He's worried about inflation going through the roof because that's what happens when you keep printing money. He's worried about the amount of money that our generations are going to have to pay back to other countries for generations to come. So you have a mindset of we need to protect America, and then you have a very reckless mindset on the other side of let's print more money, let's keep giving people more money, or we'll get it back in the form of higher taxes. So it's very sneaky what they're doing. But a lot of people don't take the time to research just how poor or how much we're going to have to pay for these poor decisions in the future. And I think if more Americans actually looked behind or looked further into the decisions that each party wants to make and the consequences that we're going to face as the American people, they might just find themselves voting more for the Republican side than they would a far left or Democratic socialist side. But a lot of people don't take that time. They don't take the time to research. Let's head over to the keyboard warrior cam and see what people had to say about Jon Ossoff's speech this morning and whether they agree or disagree. Donna Lynn says, Georgians will do the right thing for our country. Don't let them steal the vote. Dan says, I thought they had to stay away from the polls on election day. Michael says, I thought it was illegal to campaign outside a polling election. Dems seem to be doing a lot. And there he was, outside of a poll election. It's a great point. Why do the rules seem to go out the window for the Democratic Party these days? There is a protest tomorrow, which we will be live at in Washington, D.C. There's a march. They are shutting down D.C. They are shutting down parking lots. The mayor of Washington, D.C. has urged hotels to close. They want nothing to do with this protest. They even have banned guns. Well, you can't just do that. If Washington, D.C. has open carry policy, then you should be able to openly carry a weapon. You can't just change the rules and the laws whenever you see fit. But this is what the Democrats do. They change the rules when it best suits them. You're not supposed to be campaigning outside of a polling station. Yet there you have Jon Ossoff standing outside of a polling station. So, rumor has it that Antifa will be present tomorrow in Washington, D.C. during the Electoral College protest. And they're telling people you're not allowed to bring weapons. So, if you've got half of the people respecting that policy, you're not allowed to carry, and the other half, who don't seem to care about the rules, decide to bring in weapons, what do you think's going to happen if, God forbid, violence breaks out? Well, half of the protesters aren't going to be able to defend themselves, which is the very definition of being able to the right to bear arms, to defend yourself. So you can't suddenly just say, well, tomorrow during the protest, you're not allowed to carry. Well, if you're outside and there's a open carry policy for that state or that district, then that should be the law. Very simple. You can't change the rules to then put people's lives in danger, which is essentially what they're doing. Because when you have people like Antifa being bussed in by the hundreds to rally against the protesters tomorrow, who don't care about the rules anyway, who will end up bringing in weapons, you're now rendering half of those protesters defenseless. So there's been a lot of this lately, changing the laws when it fits the Democratic narrative. And I think people need to now finally stand up and say, no, you can't do that. There's the Constitution. It says we have the right to bear arms. Your district allows us the right to bear arms. We're outside. We're not in a venue. That's the law. And we're going to stick with that, not just whatever fits your agenda at any given time. Wendy says, you just want to defund the police, gain control of the people so you can do whatever you want. No one believes you. That's another big one for the Democrats, defund the police. So we've got a list a mile long. Defund the police, higher taxes, increase vaccinating. When you say increase vaccination distribution, what you really mean is make it mandatory. Increase how many people must get the vaccine. That's really all I hear. And it's very worrying when we now have our government forcing vaccinations on people. This is what will happen if we lose control of the Senate. This is a very far left mandate, and it completely violates our freedoms. We've never been forced to have to take or get a vaccine. Why now? What's different about now? A virus that has a 99.8% survival rate. Why suddenly do we need to get a vaccine? Why is it not left up to us? So there's too much dictatorship right now. There's too much government wanting control that they will completely get if Georgia doesn't win the Senate runoff. James says they are trying to buy your vote for $2,000 and your freedoms, people. Schumer said, first we take Georgia, then we take America. Biden said yesterday, let's change America. Why exactly? What part of America do we want to change? What's not working in America for everybody right now? What is so bad about America? I bet you can't even, I bet everybody who voted for Biden still doesn't know why they voted for Biden. Why do we want to change America? The economy's been doing well up until the COVID situation, understandably. When they locked us down, what happened? We dropped 30% GDP in one quarter last year. Q2 dropped 30% GDP. What happened when Trump came out and said, could we please get back to work? This is killing us. We need to get back to work. Governors started lifting lockdowns. Everybody went back to work. GDP shot up in Q3 last year, 33%. Lockdowns kill this economy. Control kills this economy. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. Change America. What part of change makes sense when the only change we've seen, the only real change that's been rammed down our throats, seems to do nothing but hurt this country? Scott says, how can he get away with campaign outside the voting precinct? Why can Democrats break the law and nothing is said or done? So, again, several people have noticed he's campaigning right outside of a polling station. Again, it is illegal and unlawful to do. Everybody says it. Bob says it. Aren't there laws against campaigning at polling places? Oh, wait. He's a Dumpocrat. During the Black Lives Matter situation, there was no problem with thousands of protesters gathering. Nobody seemed to care about masks. Nobody seemed to care that they were burning down cities, that they were looting, that they were rioting. And it was all acceptable. Yet, Trump supporters or defenders of the Constitution can't even rally without mayors of cities making a stink over it. And how many Trump rallies have you seen turn violent? Because I haven't seen any yet. They've been peaceful. They've been fair. They've shown up. They've protested. And they've gone home peacefully. And it always amazes me how much peace there is during these rallies. Yet, mayors, Democratic mayors, still seem to have a very big problem with protests, which again is their constitutional right. Yet Black Lives Matter can turn up and turn the city upside down. Yet people like Kamala Harris bail them out. The whole thing doesn't make sense. And that is why we need to fight for this, because we're going to see more of this over the next 4 years if we have an all-left controlled government. Let's head back to the Keyboard Warrior Cam and see what others have to say about John Ossoff's speech today. Daniel says, Democrats haven't done anything in 4 years, but now they're going to get cracking? That's true. It's exactly what I said. What have the Democrats actually done over the last few years? What changes have they made that's better improved America? All I hear is CDC, let's beat COVID, let's increase vaccine distributions, let's defund the police. These aren't positive changes, at least as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not sure that any of us have really seen the results positively for defunding the police. You look at Portland. Shootings are up 100%. Homicides are up 50% in just the last year. So what positive effects have we really seen from things like defunding the police? Because law enforcement officers, commissioners, are fleeing by the thousands across the country, rendering the state defenseless. How many people are going to have to die? How many calls have to go unanswered before we realize that defunding the police was a horrible mistake? Laura says, not supposed to be near a polling place. Just goes to show that they believe there are a different set of rules for them. Do as I say, not as I do. And we're experiencing that right here in New York State with our very own Governor Cuomo. Kathy says he is a voice for China and socialist communist take over the USA. No way, Jose. And Retha says, Trump has done more than anyone will ever do for America. It is not his fault for the people spread the virus. We need him, not Biden. Georgia is the most important election probably of our lifetime right now, because keeping control of the Senate keeps control of our freedom. And I don't think many Americans understand just how dangerous of a situation it's going to be if we don't keep control. 3 million people have already voted. 1 million absentee ballots have been sent in. Polls closed today at 7 p.m. They don't think they're going to be able to call it tonight. We'll see just how close this race really is. For our sake, we better hope for a landslide so there's zero potential for a recount. You better believe the Democrats are going to push for a recount if they even get a whiff of an opportunity. Understandably, we've forced many states to recount ourselves, so it's only natural that if this thing is anywhere near close or too close to call, that they're probably going to want their own recount. So I don't anticipate having a winner, depending on how close things are, for at least a couple days. Tomorrow, we will be in Washington, D.C. for the Electoral College vote. We'll be bringing you live commentary. We'll be bringing you live footage from the protests and the rallies. We'll see you guys tomorrow in D.C. It's going to be an explosive week here. We got Georgia today, Trump rallies, protests, commentaries, interviews tomorrow, live from D.C. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. You've been watching You Made It Political. You have a great rest of your Tuesday. We will see you tomorrow live from DC. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out YouMadeItPolitical.com.